Well, welcome to this videotape that covers electromagnetic radiation, measurement, remediation, and the instruments that are used to look at it. This video is being produced by InterNACHI, and the people who have put it together are from the International Institute for Building Biology and Ecology. And there's a partnership between InterNACHI and IBE to produce these videos. So my name is Larry Gust, and I'm president of the board of the International Institute for Building Biology and Ecology, IBE for short. I'm also a practicing building biology and environmental consultant and an electromagnetic radiation specialist. IBE, in cooperation with InterNACHI, is making 4 videos, starting with an introduction to building biology and the health effects that are caused by electromagnetic radiation exposure. There's a videotape on indoor air quality and one on building physics and building biology. These videos are overviews, and with the support of InterNACHI, we're offering additional training and seminars taught by qualified practicing instructors that will cover more of the details. We will cover today the types of man-made electromagnetic energies, the instruments we use to measure these energies, the sources of these electromagnetic energies that are really of concern to the public, which would include building wiring errors, parallel and neutral paths presented by things like the water line, the TV cable, and to a lesser extent, phone lines and gas lines. We also look at external wireless radiation coming from cell phone antennas and other outside sources, as well as internal sources of wireless radiation, typically the communications devices people bring into their own homes. Now let's take a look at the electromagnetic spectrum chart that shows the relationship that we have between the various types of radiation that I just mentioned. So you see the electromagnetic spectrum chart on the screen now. Looking at the bottom of that, we can see the progression of different types of sources, which are all related by frequency. Frequency increases from the left-hand side of the chart to the right-hand side of the chart. We begin with power system radiation. You can see the electrical transmission line shown in this picture. And we move on to AM radio, which is the next in frequency range, FM radio and TV. Finally, we get into the range of cell phones, and then further on up in the spectrum is Wi-Fi. We move into the light spectrum, beginning with infrared radiation, and then visible light, and then ultraviolet. So then we depart from the non-ionizing section of the electromagnetic spectrum and move into the ionizing spectrum, starting with X-rays, which of course have been recognized for a long time as being injurious to health. And then we move on to radiation from the Earth and from the cosmos in the form of gamma radiations and other things like that. One other thing I'd like you to note from this chart is that the energy that's contained in these electromagnetic emanations are going up as we go up in vibration rate of the energies that we're dealing with. So when we leave visible light, we're leaving the non-ionizing portion of the electromagnetic spectrum and moving into the ionizing portion, which has been recognized for a long time as being injurious to health. X-rays, which you can't have too much of because they injure the body, and going into the radiation that's coming from the cosmos in the form of gamma rays and that sort of thing. I want to call your attention to the upper part of this chart where the energy of the wave is mentioned. At the lower frequencies, as in power system level radiation, the energy is low. And as we move up in radiation frequency, we get into more and more stored energy into these man-made radiations, and they have the potential for doing more damage. The other thing that I would like to point out to you is that the wavelength of the radiation, which is the length between repetitions of the vibration, starts out to be very, very, very long, like the wavelength at 60 cycles for a magnetic field is 3,000 miles. And as we move up in frequency, that wavelength is shrinking, 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 shrinking until we get into the wavelength for cell phones and that sort of thing, which are in inches. And finally, way up in the spectrum into what we call the millimeter range, which are fractions of inches. So IBE likes to focus on sleeping areas or high occupancy areas like living rooms or reading areas, because these are where people spend a lot of time. In particular, sleeping areas are where your body is doing this repair work and healing work. And we've come to find after 35 years of working with people in their homes that how you sleep and how low a stress the environment is really directly related to how well you heal from problems and injuries, and how well you're able to maintain your health over the long term. The health effects caused by exposure to man-made electromagnetic fields have been referred to in great detail in the introduction video. I refer you to that. What I'd like to point out is that the existence of these energies and the effect they have on people is entering the popular culture. And you can expect more and more of your clients to be asking questions about these things as they concern themselves with whether the home would be applicable or suitable for them. If you haven't seen the AMC program called You'd Better Call Fall, I suggest that you tune in and watch that. It's been on for some number of months now, and it's a realistic depiction of people who are electrically hypersensitive and have been greatly affected by these electromagnetic fields. And there's millions of people watching this. The viewership's quite high. So concerns are being raised about the environment that people are living in, and they're certainly going to begin asking questions about it. The thing that we're operating over for people who are well and not being noticeably affected by these fields is the application of the precautionary principle. The precautionary principle really says in essence that when an activity is thought to raise harm to human beings or the environment, the thing we should do is to take action to avoid or reduce these exposures, even though we don't have direct cause and effect established by the scientific method. So even though there are now about 3,000 studies that show biological effects from electromagnetic radiations of various types, take action to avoid or reduce these exposures, even though we don't have direct cause and effect established by the scientific method. And so even though there are now about 3,000 studies that show biological effects from electromagnetic radiations of various types, we still say that we should take the precaution to keep people out of these energies to the greatest possible extent. And so that's what building biology is teaching people, and why we are assessing homes, and why we are pointing out the issues to clients and arranging to have problems that are found fixed. And of particular interest to the home inspector is that there are quite a number of issues in homes caused by wiring errors, and these wiring errors are actually violations of National Electrical Code. Looking at the precautionary principle, we can see that there could be reason based on health effect studies to be cautious about what we are doing and what kind of environments we're offering people in their homes. So the electromagnetic radiation exposure symptoms, which people are reporting, and they've been reporting these for 30 years, and we know the circumstances are similar and the symptoms keep coming up. Not everybody has the same symptom, but the symptoms are being repeated time and time again between different clients. There's a long list here. We won't go through them, but the things of notable interest are sleep disruption, waking up tired because they haven't had a good night's sleep, irritability beyond what would be normal, and things like muscle spasms and heart palpitations, which we hear a great deal about among some people, not everybody. In a moment, we're going to move to the bedroom because the level of environmental stress while sleeping is critically important to restful sleep and healing and repair of disease and injuries. So the primary focus of building biology in the bedroom is darkness. You need to have a totally dark bedroom, because any level of light in your bedroom is going to affect the pineal gland and the functioning or healing in the immune system during the night. The human nervous system, especially at night, is extraordinarily upset by excessive noise. Excessive magnetic fields need to be addressed. That may be coming from appliances, things that are plugged in the bedroom, or errors in the wiring in the distribution system in the home. Finally, we need to look at electric fields. And electric fields are almost always present in every home because we use plastic jacketed wiring, which allows these fields to escape into the room and affect people who are sleeping. We're going to look at that in detail when we get to the bedroom, but just as an overview, these fields affect the deepness of sleep, how rested you feel in the morning, your allergy response during the day, heart palpitations while you're sleeping, muscle cramping during the night. So there's an important relationship between voltage and current and power in electrical systems that we'd like to present to you in analogy form. In order to do that, let me introduce you to Ora Miller, who is a practicing building biology environmental consultant, as well as an electromagnetic radiation specialist.
So my name is Ora Miller. I'm a certified building biology environmental consultant and electromagnetic radiation specialist based in Los Angeles. I'm also the director of learning and development for the IBE, and I'm privileged to be several teaching assistants for the electromagnetic radiation seminars, both the basic and advanced levels. What I wanted to talk about, as Larry mentioned, is to explain a very important concept that is not well understood outside the building biology profession, and that is the importance and prevalence of electric fields as part of the electromagnetic spectrum. The electric fields that are present in homes are the E of the EMFs, whereas the magnetic fields that we assess and mitigate are the M of the EMFs. And because the frequency of house wiring is 60 cycles per second has a wavelength that's such that it's 3,100 miles, the electric fields and magnetic fields are uncoupled in house wiring, and the fields that they produce are independent of each other because we're in the near field. So I won't go into the details of that, but suffice it to say that if you take a Gauss meter, which only measures magnetic fields, and you go through a house, or particularly through a sleeping area, which we're going to be talking about now, and you see that there are low or no, hardly any magnetic fields there, there could be extremely high electric fields, which have a slightly different effect on the physiology, as Larry mentioned. And you'll miss that because you're only measuring for the magnetic fields. So we teach our students and our clients how to measure for electric fields separate from magnetic fields, and then we're able to reduce those. So electric fields are probably the most common EMF that there is in homes. That's been the case for decades. Of course, cell phones and all the wireless is coming up as well. That's becoming quite prevalent with the age of the Internet of Things that we're in now, and we're going to be talking about more. But electric fields have always been present and always will be as long as you have unshielded Romex plastic circuits in your walls, and the electric field extends out about 6 feet. And also if you have metal clad wiring in walls, which we recommend for new building construction and remodeling when you are opening the walls, the electric fields will be present from the plastic AC power cords that you plug in, even when you turn the load off. So the way that works is electric fields are the result of voltage, which is the pressure in the wires. Magnetic fields are due to current. So when you have current flowing through a wire, the right-hand rule says that if my thumb is going in the direction of the current down the hot wire of a circuit, the right-hand fingers, which are curling clockwise with the palm up, are showing the direction of electrons around that wire. When the current gets to the load, the light bulb or whatever the load happens to be, and that current runs back on the neutral wire, whether it's the circuit in the wall or the neutral wire of the lamp cord, then you turn your palm over, and now the thumb is pointing towards you, indicating that the current is coming back towards you on the neutral wire, and the right-hand fingers are curling counterclockwise. So the magnetic field around the hot is going clockwise, the magnetic field around the neutral is going counterclockwise. And when those are brought together, that is how the magnetic field is canceled in the room if those two wires, the hot and neutral conductor, are together and equal. We're going to go over that in more detail when we talk about wiring errors and magnetic fields from wiring errors, and also current on grounding paths. But with electric fields, the voltage in the hot wire at 120 volts extends out 6 feet and then collapses. Extends out 6 feet and collapses. And this happens 120 times a second. And the reason it happens is because when you have the sine wave, you go from 0 voltage at the neutral crossing point or 0 crossing point up to the peak of voltage and back to 0. That's the positive half of the cycle. And then it goes from there down to the trough, which is the maximum in the negative direction, and back to 0. It's 2 halves of one cycle, a positive half and a negative half. So what you have all night long when you're trying to sleep is a field that comes out 6 or 8 feet and then collapses, and then comes out again and then collapses. But it's positive, then it's negative, then positive, and then negative, 120 times a second. All of our cells are comprised of ions that are positive or negative in their polarization, calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, as well as within the atom, the protons and electrons, of course, positively and negatively charged respectively. So what happens is as this field expands out, and you're laying in it, because most people have their bed within 6 feet of a wall with Romex wiring in it between the outlets, and they'll have lamp cords. They'll have other circuits as well under the floor. So this field extends into that space, in fact, everywhere, even in the daytime. We're sitting in a field right now here in this living room. But particularly where you sleep, this field is coming out from all these sources all night long, even with the lights off, because the pressure of voltage is always present, whether there's a current load or not. The analogy that I use for my clients and that we teach to our students is, think of it like a garden hose. When you turn on a spigot of a garden hose, you allow 80 pounds of pressure to fill that garden hose up to the nozzle. If you don't squeeze that nozzle, that water doesn't flow. There's no current flow once it gets out there. But the pressure's there. It's always there, as long as you have that spigot open. That's analogous to turning on the breaker, which allows 120 volts at the speed of light to enter into that circuit to wherever it stops. And then 120 volts at the speed of light to have a lamp cord up to the switch. So a lamp cord is nothing more than adding another length of hose with a nozzle at the end of it. When you pick up that nozzle and you squeeze that nozzle, 80 pounds of pressure of the water from the water department through your house causes the water to go out, to flow out, and you can water your garden that way. And you feel a kick when you do that because of the pressure, so you know it's there. When you let go of the nozzle, you stop the flow of water, just like, and you still feel a kick because there's still pressure up to your hand. That's the important thing to remember. In the same way, when you turn a light bulb on, up at the base of the bulb, at the top of the lamp, you now are closing the gap, and you're allowing the electrons to flow through, lighting up the light bulb. The only difference in this analogy is the current must flow back on a second path right next to the first. And that gets back to the source. And that's how you light up the light bulb. You must have a full loop. Whereas with the water analogy, it goes out in one direction and stays there, or goes that way. But the point is, when you turn off that light, the pressure of voltage at 120 volts is still there right up to the switch. Just like the pressure of the water up to the nozzle in your hand. So when you turn that light out, I've had electricians tell me that there's no EMF there because the current is gone. And I say to them, respectfully, that they're right. But the voltage is still there, and they don't deny that. What they don't remember or realize or put together in terms of what they're taught as electricians versus what we know as building biologists, where we put health as our emphasis in terms of everything that we know for the health of our clients. That voltage extends out 6 feet and then collapses. The field does, the field from the voltage, and then collapses. So all night long, you have this oscillating field coming at you from multiple directions. So if you're laying down, it could come from the Romex that goes by your head here. It could come up from underneath you. It could come from the right, from the cord that's in the bedside stand, and over here at the other side. And it's causing this agitating influence. So when we do the test and you shut off the breakers that we identify in this test, you actually sleep like you're camping. You actually sleep like you're camping, although you're in the comfort of your own bed. We don't turn off all the circuits in the house, only the ones that we identify that have a portion of that circuit within 6 to 8 feet of the body. Because if the circuit is beyond that, it doesn't reach where you're sleeping. Now, the benefit of this is, as Larry mentioned, a tremendous improvement in health and a reduction of symptoms. This is what people report to us. And it forms the basis of improvement that people have with other aspects of the work that we do. So in the electrically sensitive community and people who are aware of EMFs, we are aware of the same things that they are, and we measure them, we mitigate them. But this is one area that is not as well known outside the building biology profession. This is not as well known outside the building biology profession. And that is one thing that makes us unique. It's a foundation and cornerstone of what we do. So it makes a big difference. And the only thing that we would say to you folks as home inspectors that is relevant to this issue is one of the things that is a deal breaker in my book, besides overhead power lines and the magnetic fields that produces into the house, which we cannot mitigate, and it's above levels that we consider to be safe. We'll cover that elsewhere. Or a transmitter like a cell phone tower or radio transmitter that causes high radio frequencies into the house or under the property that we can mitigate in the house, not the property, not the yard, but in the house, but it's expensive shielding. We'll talk about that as well. So the important thing to keep in mind about electric fields is it's a type of EMF that is perhaps the most common. I only say perhaps because it is the most common type of EMF found in a home. It's just that cell phones and wireless Wi-Fi routers is coming up in prevalence. But electric fields is unknown and overlooked. I happen to call it the unknown EMF because it really affects people's health because it affects how deep your sleep is. So it's important to understand this and to mention to your clients that this is something that they should pay attention to, and you could refer them to building biologists in your area or learn this yourself and provide this service for them because it makes a big difference in terms of their health. So next we're going to have an actual demonstration of how we assess electric fields in sleeping areas. And the person who will be doing that is Misty Krosek. She is a certified building biology environmental consultant and electromagnetic radiation specialist based in Boulder, Colorado.
Hi, I'm Misty Krosek, building biology environmental consultant and electromagnetic radiation specialist. Today we're in a bedroom environment where we're going to be demonstrating with a voltage sensor the electric fields that impact the sleeping area and the importance of not only turning off a lamp during sleep time, but also actually turning off the circuit breakers for the bedroom in order to allow for maximum repair for your body to have the maximum amount of ability to repair. So as you can see, I have a lamp on here and I have a voltage sensor, which demonstrates that there are electric fields emanating from the lamp. And when I turn the lamp off, those electric fields are still there. So in order to maximize the benefits of sleeping at night and your body's ability to repair, you would need to turn off the circuit breakers in and I have a voltage sensor, which demonstrates that there are electric fields emanating from the lamp. And when I turn the lamp off, those electric fields are still there. So in order to
Wonder what that does to plants and microorganisms.
maximize the benefits of sleeping at night and your body's ability to repair, you would need to turn off the circuit breakers in your bedroom in order to mitigate the electric fields that are present. In addition to the electric fields that would be emanating from a lamp, if you don't turn off the circuit breakers to your room for sleeping during the nighttime, there's also electric fields that would emanate from the wiring in your walls, particularly if you have Romex wiring in your walls that are not shielded. If you don't turn off the circuit breakers, the electric fields will still impact you while you're sleeping, as opposed to if you have metal-clad wiring, which shields the electric fields during the nighttime, so you wouldn't have to turn off your circuit breakers. So even if you have metal-clad wiring in your walls, which is shielding the electric current, if you have a lamp or another device that's plugged in that doesn't have a shielded cord, the electric fields would still emanate from the cord that goes from the outlet to whatever device it's powering. So it's possible to get shielded cords as well for different devices that you have in your room. So that would also be If you don't turn off the circuit breakers, the electric fields will still impact you while you're sleeping, as opposed to if you have metal clad wiring, which shields the electric fields during the nighttime, so you wouldn't have to turn off your circuit breakers. So even if you have metal clad wiring in your walls, which is shielding the electric current, if you have a lamp or another device that's plugged in that doesn't have a shielded cord, the electric fields would still emanate from the cord that goes from the outlet to whatever device it's powering. So it's possible to get shielded cords as well for different devices that you have in your room. So that would also mitigate the electric fields. Or you could also, if you have traditional Romex wiring, you can turn off the circuit breakers, which would mitigate all electric fields in the sleeping area. So we've switched out our lamp to a lamp that has a shielded power cord. If you have clad wiring in your home and you were to use a lamp with a shielded power cord, you would eliminate the electric fields that would impact you during sleep, and you wouldn't need to turn off any breakers. Now we're going to be measuring electric fields with an electric field meter in the sleeping environment. This is a 3-axis meter that measures the electric fields that most building biologists will be using. It's called an NFA 1000. When I turn on the meter reads approximately 16 volts per meter in the sleeping environment with the lamp on. When I turn the lamp off, we're still at approximately 16 volts per meter. And if I unplug the lamp, the electric fields slightly reduce. We're approximately at 11 volts per meter now, which demonstrates the necessity of turning off circuit breakers for the sleeping environment in order to mitigate and eliminate the electric fields. The rates and levels that we're at right now are of extreme concern according to building biology levels, which are demonstrated on this chart. Extreme concern is anything above 10 volts per meter. And in order to get it to an area of no concern, we would need to go down to 0.3 volts per meter. We've done a test in the sleeping area to identify the impacting breakers that the building biology profession goes through. And we're going to demonstrate that by turning off these breakers, the electric fields
That
are
thing sounds like it's
eliminated.
going up.
I have an assistant out at the panel ready to turn off those breakers. So I'm going to ask the assistant to do that at this time, and you'll see the impact on the meter. Can you go ahead and turn off the breakers, please?
Oh yeah, she's got a fucking radio, that's why.
So the breakers have been turned off, and you can hear and also see that the meter has went down to 0. So the electric fields, by turning off the breakers, in this particular case, it was 2 breakers because there were 2 circuits that were impacting the bed within the 6 to 8 foot range. So we've turned off 2 breakers in the sleep.
So if you go to Barry Trower, he's a microwave weapons expert, military microwave weapons expert. He explains that even adding in the equation that you have bed spring coils that will vibrate to that as well. So it's added.
Sleeping area. And as you can see again, the meter says 0. So this would be, from an electric field standpoint, a safe sleeping area. My colleague Orem Miller is now going to demonstrate electric fields via a body voltage meter.
So what I'm demonstrating here is another meter that we use for measuring electric fields. This is the body voltage method. And of course, you all recognize that this is a simple digital multimeter. We have it set to volts AC, not DC. And we have one of these leads connected to the ground of an outlet on the other side of the room there, or we can run it out a window to a stake in the ground. So that's our reference. So we're referring the electric field exposure of this area to Earth. Now the other leg, or the other lead that we have here is attached to a metal cylinder, which if I hold it here, this acts as an antenna. But if I hold this in my hand, my whole body becomes an extension of that antenna. So I am now the antenna. And the value of using this method is, number one, it's very affordable because you can put this kit together for less than $100 or buy a pre-made kit from Less EMF or Safe Living Technologies in Ontario, Canada, for less than $100 or around that cost. And when I hold on to this, this gives us a number. Now, according to the building biology standards, the number that I'm measuring right now, which is hovering around 2,000 millivolts, which is 2 volts relative to Earth, the 2,000 millivolts is well into the extreme anomaly level for a sleeping area, which begins at 1,000 millivolts and above. So we want to mitigate that. And again, as we demonstrated before, if we turn out the light, it doesn't change. It's still close to 2,000 millivolts. Now, I want to demonstrate one thing before I do that. You notice, you can't really see this unless you pan in, but as my hand gets closer, my left hand, which is not holding the meter, gets closer to this, it goes up to 2,400, 2,500, 2,600. So we can tell that this is the source of the electric field. But when I turn it off and unplug it, we still have 700 to 800 millivolts in this sleeping environment relative to where I'm standing. So you normally give this to the client and have them hold this, and then you're outside at the meter, at the breaker panel with a walkie-talkie, and you go through the testing method that we teach in the building biology profession. So now I'm going to call my assistant who's outside and ask him to turn off the breakers. Our goal is to get this down close to 100 millivolts or less. Can you please turn off the breakers outside? Now that number is close to 100, 130, 140 millivolts or 0.13 volts. So we are now at what we would consider to be at least in the slight anomaly range. It's not always possible to get into the no anomaly range, which would be 10 millivolts or less, but at least we're in the slight anomaly range and out of the severe and extreme anomaly ranges. So we would consider this to be a safer sleeping environment than when we started, which was 2,000. So we've dropped this down 95%.
%? That ain't bad.
Here's one thing you need to do before buying anything online.
Oh shit, is that loud? Well, we have a little break in between. I hope you enjoyed this. This is definitely where I'm going. I've been on this road for a while. Lights are just becoming Bluetooth enabled and Wi-Fi enabled on large scale. So I hope you can keep that in your mind on what is going to happen to all those workers there unshielded. And it's in correlation with this thing. For the home grower, you too are in great danger. Once that light becomes Bluetooth and Wi-Fi enabled, which it is right now, I just started pushing them out. But with the apps though, you can just look up cell phone radiation and damage that's already known. So they're going to put an app for someone that's a new grower or someone with cancer or whatever to sit there and fidget around with an app on your phone where it says in legal you shouldn't have the phone any closer than you should have the phone 1 inch away from the body. And when you're younger, you have more moisture and you will absorb more microwaves. And you figure if someone can do something without doing it, they're going to do it. Automation is where everybody wants to go. And every single grow show that I've seen so far in the last 6 months, it's all about the automation grow. No one wants to be there. Everybody else wants to do other shit. And that's fine, but know that you're being blasted with microwaves every time you look at your phone. And the question is, how long do you spend on it? And on top of it, it's very addicting. It's set up that way. So the more you have to use your phone to communicate with your grow equipment, it's just more microwaves being blasted at you.
EMFs that come from the outside. We have radio frequencies from what we call a smart electric meter and also a smart gas meter. And we have magnetic fields from the electric meter and from the electric breaker panel, which is here. So we'll start with the magnetic fields first. We would consider these to be what we call point sources. And as was mentioned before, point source magnetic fields drop off exponentially with distance, not linearly, but exponentially. So most of the decline happens very close to the sources. So that means that we'd have high magnetic fields close up And we'll measure that now. I'll put the radio frequency meter down and measure with the Gauss meter here. And close to these sources, we have 9 to 12 milligauss, 19, 20 milligauss here, 40 actually. But even 1 foot away, it's down to 7, from 43 down to 7. And then 2 feet away, it's already down to 2. 3 feet away, it's down to 0.7, which is fine. Anything less than 1 milligauss is good as far as we're concerned. So most of the reduction occurred in the first foot or two. The thing is, you wouldn't want to have a bed or a couch or a desk or a play area just on the other side of this wall. So that's something to keep in mind in terms of the placement of furniture and in the design of homes. The second thing we want to look at is radio frequency EMFs. This is a Gigahertz Solutions HF59B, HF for high
It's
frequency,
so fucking high.
because we're
I already know
measuring
it.
frequencies here that are in the millions and billions of cycles per second, which is megahertz and gigahertz, as opposed to 60 cycles per second, which is the frequency for magnetic fields and electric fields in house wiring. So we're now shifting into a radio frequency assessment, and you've already seen a review of the health effects of radio frequency EMFs on the human physiology from the review that Diana Schultz gave, and also Larry Gust talking about this in this home. So we're going to be measuring the radio frequency transmission from what we call a smart meter. And the difference between a smart meter and the old analog meters is, number one, it's digital. The smart meter is digital. The analog meters are analog. They're mechanical. There generally are no electronic parts in them. Although I have seen an analog meter with a radio transmitter in it, but generally that's not the case. And not all digital meters are smart, in the sense that not all of them transmit beacon signals throughout the day to connect to each other through what's called the neighborhood area network, the mesh network. But in this case, that is what happens here. So these smart meters are actually connecting to each other to synchronize and to check in so that the utility knows that the meter is working.
So I have to stress this because it's not going to be mentioned here, but it will be mentioned in other videos that you watch, guaranteed, especially if it comes from Environmental Health Trust. So you can see that meter. You really can't see the side of the meter, but it's a skinny one. So that's fine and dandy, skinny one. Well, not fine and dandy, just fine and dandy for the video. Like he just said, they work as a network. So this means if someone has a huge grow on the block and spends, like I shouldn't say huge grow, I should say a high electric bill. Could be a grow, could be whatever, but whoever's got the most strongest power bill that's been paid year after year after year, I would say 2-3 years, if you've been paying your bill on time, they probably already done it by now. But they will put the industrial one, it's longer and fatter, and it will be like a central beacon for them to expand their network. If they know that you own your own home, or even if they don't, they're just gonna throw it on there if you're a big spender or a big user of electricity, because it's being used so much, it could be used as a beacon.
And then, depending on the utility, once a day or twice a day, these are programmed to send 24 hours worth of data, or whatever the interval is, 4 hours, 12 hours worth of data to the power company through the mesh network. So it's a little complicated, but you have collection meters that get the information from meters that are lower on this, and you can have 5 levels, so that the level 5 meters can actually collect information from, say, 1,000.
There's 5 different ones. Holy shit.
You don't know which level meter you have on the home. Now, there is evidence of harm. We have reports of this from our clients, and there's research to show that there is harm from these radio frequencies from smart meters, as well as
People are getting
we have
sick
from wireless devices inside the home. And some municipalities, some utilities have opt-out programs. Southern California, where I'm from, has that, thanks to the efforts of a number of people who petitioned the California Public Utilities Commission to initiate an opt-out program, which is now present in the 3 regulated utilities in that state. And that's true for a number of utilities, private and public, around the country and many states. For those individuals who live in a location that doesn't have that opt-out program, such as here in Colorado, where we are, some homeowners will actually put shielding around this. And this is a very fine mesh metal screen that you can see here. And then it's held in place by some metallized tape here. And the metal backing of this meter base here will block 90+% of the transmission going that way and to the sides. And then there's more coverage on the sides here extending out from the screen. So that helps with the backscatter and side scatter to reduce it significantly. But it allows the signal to come out in the front. Some of these guards, smart meter guards, the brand name of one version actually has screen here, and the utility is still able to get their signal. I'm going to turn on this meter here. Actually, I've had it on, but I'm going to turn the volume up. And it turns out that this particular meter, made by GE, but this is an Itron, I-T-R-O-N, transmitter inside there. And so we heard saw a 5,000 microwatt per meter square level. And I'm going to put this on peak hold
Fucking crazy.
and watch the watch here. So in about 20 seconds, this will transmit again. And you hold it 3 feet away in the far field. This is a far field meter. And then you get an accurate measurement. So we'll just wait and you'll hear, perhaps you can hear the sound. Okay, I don't know if you heard that, but that was a 5,000 microwatt level. I don't know if you can see that, but 5,300 microwatts per meter squared. That's a reading that is, 5 times what we consider to be extreme.
Fucking crazy.
And
5
we
times.
actually would like to have our clients in sleeping areas be below 10 microwatts per meter squared. That gets people into the slight concern level for biological risk. So it's good to opt out if you can. It's good to shield if you can't. It's good to keep your analog meter if they haven't put smart meters in yet. But we prefer that people protect themselves from this particular form of radio frequency EMF. And one last thing on the subject. This is not the only source of radio frequency EMF exposure in the house. A lot of people focus on the smart meters and they don't think about the cell phones, the Wi-Fi routers, and all the other sources that will you inside the house. But this is just one thing that we need to take care of, and it's important to take care of all the others, including the other EMFs, electric fields, magnetic fields, and so on.
The farther away
So
you
some
are from your
municipalities,
girl with
there
your
is no beacon
phone,
signal.
the
It's
farther
just
that
the,
thing needs to use power.
sending of the data once, twice, 4 times a day, and no beacon signals between that. But with smart electric meters, there is the beacon signal, which can be several times a minute or twice a minute, regular, irregular. And it's the accumulation of this radio frequency energy going into the house, especially if there's a bedroom on the other side of this wall, that's a problem for people. The other thing I wanted to mention while we're out here is to talk about magnetic fields from what we call parallel return paths for current to flow back to the transformer. So in this neighborhood, we have underground electric wires from the utility coming in here, coming underneath and then up into the meter base here. And then through this conduit, there will be a main shutoff in here, and then your breakers. If there is another way for current to leave this building besides the neutral wire on the electric service, utility service drop cables, then electricity will take those other paths. It will go here primarily because the resistance is lowest, it's the most direct path, and it is the path that it should all be on. So 100% of what comes in should be going back out on the neutral of this service drop, whether it's underground or overhead. But if you give electricity another way to get back to the transformer, it will take that as well. So electricity does not take the path of least resistance exclusively. It takes the path of least resistance primarily. But if you give it a parallel path, like water flowing down a mountain, it will take all paths. So maybe 85 to 90% is here, and you can have a 5%, 8% or so going on these other paths. What that results in is a net current. So if you have 8 amps coming in, you should have 8 amps going back out. And if that happens, the magnetic field around the incoming current going up, the right-hand rule would say it would go clockwise if you look from underneath. Should that magnetic field would equal and cancel fully the magnetic field around the current on the neutral going down, which would be this way, where the electrons are going counterclockwise. However, when you have parallel paths, which include metal water service supply pipes, which are grounded to for lightning to get into the earth as the system ground by code, and the sheathing of TV cables, sometimes telephone lines, and then sometimes the ground wire to pool equipment. These are all parallel paths that return current can flow on to get back to the neighborhood transformer. When that happens, that current that's on these other paths is not here. There's a deficit between the two. The current's always what it is on the hots. It doesn't come in the other way, but it goes back on the neutral here and elsewhere. So that what we teach is that we need to bring that current back here. So 100% or close to it goes back here. There's always a little bit trickling.
You want
more? We want 90
in depth
plus,
on that.
95 plus percent or more, 98% on this path. So that's not a deal breaker in our book, but it is something that we need to caution the
Go with
client,
Sam.
the homeowner,
They'll
that
go
they
real
need to
deep
know
into
about,
it.
the person who's interested in buying this house, that if they have these other parallel paths, we need to find them and mitigate them. If not, what happens is there are magnetic fields that come from the current that flows on the grounding wires to the water pipe, which could be on the other side of the house,
is out of
which is the case
retirement.
here. It's down in the
You'd be able to
basement.
call her.
Or to the TV cable, which may come in here, which does, but it could come in on the other side of the house. So then you have this current flowing on these grounding paths inside the house or through the house to get to the egress on the other side, to the water pipe or the TV cable, and it causes magnetic fields in your house. Fortunately, that's a fixable situation. So we discussed electric field EMFs in the sleeping area, which is the place and time, that is when we sleep at night, when we are most concerned about that particular type of EMF. It's, again, the most unknown type of EMF. It's the E of EMFs, electric field, magnetic field. And that electric field exposure is of most concern in that time and in that place. But in the daytime and evening time, we can also have electric field exposure, particularly from an appliance like a computer, ungrounded appliances. This is what I mean. And what we're talking about is power cords that have a 2-prong plug on them, not a 3-prong plug. So this grounding prong here makes the difference. And that's true for laptops and desktops that we put our hands onto. It's true for refrigerators and other appliances that we are near or touch. They need to be grounded, not ungrounded. Now, desktops are usually almost always grounded, so that's not the issue. It's laptops. And whether it's a Mac or a PC can come with a power cord like this, which is the power cord that goes from the transformer to the plug, and that can either be 2-pronged like this or 3-pronged like this. This is what we prefer and what we recommend. So when it comes to Macs, what we recommend is that instead of using this adapter that comes in the box, you actually cannot put it on in the first place, or if it comes that way, pull it off, and you'll see that there is a grounding button here that goes to the chassis of the computer. But on the inside of this adapter, there is only plastic. There is no metal on the inside of this sleeve to come in contact with this because there's no ground prong here. However, in the box, you have this, and this is what should be used to power your laptop from Macintosh. This adapter has metal on the inside of the sleeve, and when you slide this on to this button and use this, you are grounding the laptop that you're putting your hands onto. So let me show you what the electric field levels are like when we use this adapter with the 2-pronged plug. So we'll plug it into an extension cord here. And we'll use the body voltage meter to measure the electric field.
That's the best way to do it.
So
Then you know
remember,
exactly what's
this
going
is an
into your
antenna,
body.
and when I hold on to it, my whole body is an extension of that antenna. And now we're measuring the electric field exposure of any part of my body, hands, legs, feet. So when I just put my hand even a few inches away from this chest, I'm already at 5,000 to 6,000 millivolts, which is 5 to 6 volts, relative to Earth, because this is our ground. So we're measuring the exposure here relative to Earth. We say that anything above 1,000 millivolts is in the extreme concern level for sleeping areas. We don't have building biology evaluation guidelines for daytime and evening areas, but we extrapolate from the table that we have, which is for sleeping areas. So when I put my hand on this chassis of this laptop, it actually goes up to 45,000 millivolts. So that is not a healthy exposure, and this is the case when you use ungrounded laptops or ungrounded computers. So what we recommend is that you swap out this adapter for the cord that came in the box. So we plug this in, and now I will plug this grounded plug into the extension cord. And now this whole apparatus is grounded, and you'll see a substantial difference in the body voltage reading. And now when I have my hand close to it, it's only 800 millivolts, 0.8 volt, as opposed to 5,000 to 6,000 before. And when I touch this, it actually goes down because this is grounded. This chassis is now grounded. And now it's down around 200 or 300 millivolts, 0.2, 0.3 volts relative to Earth. And that's a good number for daytime exposure. The other way that you can ground a laptop is through the printer cable to a printer that has a grounded plug. And also there are adapters that you can buy that you can put to the USB port that have a ground plug on the other end. So there are multiple ways that you can ground a laptop. And this is one of the EMFs that we pay attention to in the building biology profession in terms of the relative potential harm that this can cause for health. So we have an example of the elevated electric field exposure that you have in the proximity of an ungrounded refrigerator. And we'll show you that now. And you can see that the levels are quite high without even touching it, just in the proximity of this refrigerator that happens to be ungrounded. Now you can even have a situation where you have a grounded plug on a laptop or a desktop or a refrigerator or any other appliance, but the house has a two-pronged outlet that doesn't have a ground prong from wiring before the 1960s or so. In that case, you want to have at least one grounded outlet in every room, especially where you use your computer and for your refrigerator, however you accomplish that. You can sometimes have an outlet that has a ground a hole, but it's not hooked up. So of course, you're all familiar with the use of circuit testers. And what you need to see, as I can show you here, the proper configuration that we want you to see from an EMF standpoint is this, where the center light is lit, meaning that the circuit breaker is on, and that there's 120 volts here, but that this ground indicator here, the second yellow light, needs to be lit and as bright as the center light. And if it's dim, then it's loose and it's as if it was not there. So that needs to be fully grounded in order to avoid the electric field exposure.
Let's turn our attention now to the third energy in most homes, which is radio frequency energy. Most of the time we're talking about things that people have brought into their house themselves. Their cordless telephones, their wireless internet connections, their wireless devices like iPads and iPhones, or the non-Mac equivalent of that. So we're going to take a look at the levels that these kinds of devices are generating in a home. So we have here a total energy density measurement meter made in Germany, called the Gigahertz Solutions HF59D. It's the professional meter. we building biologists tend to use. It measures the total power density from all RF sources in a room in the region of interest, which is 27 megahertz to 3 gigahertz. We have in this home a typical setup of a router and a cordless telephone base station. The thing of concern is the cordless telephone base station, not so much the phone that's resting in it or the extension phones that might be in other rooms. The reason for that is because this device transmits all the time, whether you're using the phone or not. And this internet router transmits all the time a beacon signal, whether you're using your internet connection or not. So let's turn on the meter and both hear and see what this sounds like in the kitchen area.
That's the figure 8. That's so you get every angle.
Okay, so let's assume I'm working in the kitchen area, preparing meals 3 times a day. The kids are playing in the dining room, on the floor in the kitchen, and we've got this stuff sitting in here. Could be in your office. It's frequently in somebody's office. We're measuring levels of in excess of 20,000 microwatts per square meter here from that setup. If I move down to the further end of the kitchen, probably 10, 12 feet away, we're running 11,000 microwatts per square meter. Still a very high level of radiation when in the home, our goal is to be less than 10, not 11,000, but less than 10, 10. We can even see that this pollution has an effect over here in the family room. So 4,000 microwatts per square meter, even in the family room, which we would say would be 20 feet away from the source. Okay, so now we've made the measurements in the kitchen and in the family room. Let's just see what the effect is of getting rid of these things one at a time. Here goes the cordless phone. So the cordless phone is gone, and we're basically looking at router levels still somewhat below 20,000, but still 18,000 microwatts per square meter. We get rid of the router, and silence descends upon the room, and we have gone down to around 1 microwatt per square meter. So you can see that you're doing this to yourselves if you have these things in your house. In this particular location, we're looking at a pretty decent digital environment coming from outside the house. It's what we've done to ourselves inside the house. So the solution to the problem with the phone is to throw it out and get yourself, or give it to somebody you don't like, and get yourself a corded phone and plug it in. You don't have these problems. Well, as far as the internet connection is concerned, we all want to be connected to the internet, but there's no virtue in having it go through the air. In fact, the data transmission speed is low going through the air compared to what it could be going through a wire. So we can get these routers, which are traffic cops that allow you to use more than one device and connect to one internet connection. It's a traffic cop and decides who gets to go onto the internet at any one time. You can plug right into the back of this with a wire, and you can go to your laptop computer or your desktop computer with this, and you can access the inside of this machine by a control panel. You can turn off the wireless function. These are the antennas that are broadcasting that to the house. You also can buy on the internet devices that have a little physical button on it. You can turn the wireless portion on and off, and it doesn't interfere at all with the hardwired portion of the router. This particular router has room for 4 devices. If 4 devices aren't enough for you, you can get an Ethernet fast switch, you can get 8, 12, 16, 20 individual places you can plug in, and one traffic cop can direct the traffic from all of those devices wanting to use the internet. So we introduced and made measurements using the gigahertz solutions meter, which is around a $2,000 to $2,200 piece of equipment. There are pieces of equipment that aren't as accurate. They're not recognized in court for readings, like this one is in Europe. But there's an acoustometer, AM10, which is around $400 to $500, which gives you both digital readout and LEDs that show you the levels of radiation by the colors of the LEDs at a price of about a fifth of the price of this one. And then finally, there's another meter made by the same company called the Acousticom 2. And you see a picture of it here. The Acousticom 2 is around $260. And it only has a LED display. You won't get a digital readout where you can get specific numbers. But for comparing readings between, hey, things are good over here and I feel fine, and am I going to feel fine in this house or this location? And you can use this to compare readings between an area where you're fine and areas which would be higher where you wouldn't be fine. But to get accurate readings that you are able to compare with health standards that have been being reported in the studies, you need something that actually will truly give you a real reading as to the amount of energy that's in the air. If we were in a location where we had a high level of outside radiation coming from cell phone towers, which is the principal culprit in those cases, and you can get situations where the readings in houses are in the hundreds and thousands, and they've got nothing to do with equipment like this. They're coming from the outside. There are shielding materials that you can use on the walls and the windows that we cover in the advanced courses presented by IBE every year. So we talked about getting rid of the wireless signal through the air by turning off the wireless feature inside the router, but you want to remember that there's a transmission from your laptop computer. Typically, the antenna is in the lid. You're sitting right in front of it, and that's a very strong transmission. I mean, if on some of these computers, it could be 160,000 microwatts per square meter, about 2 feet away, which is right about where you might be. So you have to go in to your computer and access the wireless control panel and turn off that emanation. Some computers have a little switch on here that you can push and turn it off, and a little symbol for a wireless router goes from blue to orange, or you have to access it on the screen through some screen. In Macs, that happens to be across the top, the heading across the top, and there's an icon for your wireless connection, and you pull that down and you can turn it on or off. So, and another feature that all of our laptops and our desktop computer now have is a Bluetooth connection, so you can have a wireless mouse and a wireless keyboard. Radiation levels next to the wireless mouse and the wireless keyboard are very high, and it's transmitting to the computer, which also has a transmission when the Bluetooth is on. So you need to make sure that not only is the Wi-Fi off, but the Bluetooth is off as well. So these tend to be heavy polluters in the home, and from the standpoint of health and the levels of radiation we have versus the research reports that are showing that there are biological effects at a very, very low level, 10 or even less than 10 microwatts per square meter. If you want to refer back to the introductory tape, Diana Schultz reviews the studies that point out the levels that these sorts of biological effects are occurring at.